really unfathomable that something of this magnitude has so much uncertainty so close to the end date. From a labor perspective, it's super important for us that we retain people. We have already had problems with some of our skilled people deciding to leave because they felt no longer welcome in the UK. Of course, we love to hire local people, but there are certain skills that the EU nationals have that local people necessarily don't have, and a business of our size really can't afford to be going through the visa process. So time to market for us is really critical. We produce natural live beer, it's fresh beer. The last thing I would want to see is my beer held up in the baking sun trying to get across the border. In 2019, we have the blueprint of a plan to go and treble our capacity here. And if there was a crash out, then absolutely we would have to put that on hold.
Brexit for us is just, I think the problem is the unknown. We don't know how it's going to affect us, so it's really hard to plan. The government, they just seem to argue amongst themselves. So I don't think they have been very clear about what happens. Obviously, Theresa May's got her plan of what she wants to happen, but as far as I'm aware, it's sort of been laughed out. I don't feel like they've been very helpful.
This is a disaster. We have no idea what is going to happen, whether there's going to be a deal, a no deal, a second referendum. Everything is in the air. Do we stay in the UK? Do we move out into a European market? Do we split our manufacturing between here and Europe? Or do we just leave the UK and say, OK, we'll set up in a European country so that we can move freely around Europe and just say goodbye to the UK market?
We've spoken to each of our distributors within the EU, and they are prepared to take the product early next year on the basis that will then get it outside the UK before any of the difficulties come in.
We've been talking with our haulage companies, and some of them have already set up hubs that will basically take the operation that we have here and form it in the Netherlands. Other options is for us to produce, set up our own network in Europe, which means staffing. So that means what happens here. Trade has to go on. We have a lot of people we support here. We're making the final decision. It'll probably be December. We know what the options are for us, unlike the government. But I think come December, we'll have to act.
If you talk to politicians, and I've talked to quite a few, they don't know. But even if the government does a deal, it then has to go to Parliament. Now Parliament then has to decide whether it's going to support the deal or not. Well, everything you hear indicates to me that Parliament is highly likely not to support it. We work in over 30 different languages, so obviously language skills are really important in several ways. One is actually talking to clients. We have to produce materials in over 30 different languages. Having people with those language skills is really important to us. What the government is saying is that EU citizens will be treated the same as non-EU citizens. If they want a right to reside, they have to meet certain criteria. Now those criteria are being set by people who aren't in business, who will not make any difference between whether it's London or whether it's Bristol or whether it's Birmingham or John O'Groats. It doesn't matter to them.
The big risk about no deal is the approval of the product. Now, the government technical notice says that the UK will continue to recognise the CE mark, but that has to be reciprocated. So, for example, it would be easy for a product which is approved for use in March 19 to continue to be approved for use in April. But that doesn't mean that we could then sell to Europe if they don't recognise the CE mark in the other direction. So in theory, it could actually eliminate our business overnight in Europe. What happens if I can't get goods in order to sell on to the NHS? Trade is a worry. Cross-border administration, how do I get product in and out of the country? That's a worry. I think there's a shortage of clarity, and the sooner, whatever the outcome is, the sooner we know about it, the better it is that we can plan.